Marcus Washington stared at the viral video showing him being dragged off the first-class seat. 30 million views overnight. His phone buzzed with CNN's call. He smiled grimly at the airline CEO's panicked text. "Name your price." They had no idea what was coming next. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that made your blood boil. The story you're about to hear will show how one man's humiliation became an unexpected catalyst for change in corporate America. Ready to see justice in action? Let's begin. Marcus Washington was not a man who attracted attention by accident. At 45, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had defied every statistical probability to reach the pinnacle of Silicon Valley. As the founder and CEO of CyberShield Solutions, a cybersecurity firm valued at $1.2 billion, he represented a rarity in the tech world, a black man who had built his empire from nothing but raw intelligence and unstoppable determination. On this particular Tuesday morning, Marcus straightened his custom-tailored navy suit in the mirror of his San Francisco penthouse. The reflection showed a man with close-cropped salt and pepper hair, intelligent brown eyes behind titanium-framed glasses, and skin the color of dark walnut. His 6'2" frame remained athletic despite the endless hours behind desks and in boardrooms. Today mattered more than most days in his already remarkable career. "CyberShield stock up another 2 points this morning, sir," said his assistant Jamila through the apartment's speaker system. "And Mr. Williams from White Tech confirmed your meeting in Chicago at 4. Marcus nodded to himself. "Thanks, Jamila. Car downstairs in 20? Already waiting, sir. I've uploaded the final merger documents to your secure server." The White Tech Industries merger represented everything Marcus had worked toward for the past decade. $500 million, market dominance, and a chance to create the most diverse executive leadership team in tech history. Jeffrey Williams, White Tech's CEO, was a shrewd businessman who respected Marcus but was notoriously impatient. This in-person meeting would seal their future, or destroy it. Marcus's journey to this moment had been anything but easy. Born to a single mother in Harlem, he had watched her work 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. His mother, Elaine Washington, had sacrificed everything to ensure her only son could focus on his education. While other kids played basketball, after school, Marcus built computers from discarded parts he scavenged from neighborhood dumpsters. His exceptional math skills and programming talent had earned him a full scholarship to MIT, where he graduated top of his class despite the constant undercurrent of professors and classmates who seemed surprised by his intelligence. "You're very articulate," they would say, the backhanded compliment revealing their low expectations. After graduation, Marcus had faced hundreds of rejections from venture capitalists when trying to launch CyberShield. "Great idea," they would say, "but we're not sure you're the right fit to lead this company." The unspoken bias was always hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. But Marcus had persevered. He bootstrapped his company with savings and small investments from friends until his innovative security algorithm caught the attention of a major bank. 10 years later, CyberShield protected data for 60% of Fortune 500 companies. As his private car navigated through morning traffic toward San Francisco International Airport, Marcus reviewed the merger documents on his tablet. He had been working 20-hour days for weeks to finalize every detail. His eyes burned from exhaustion, but the thrill of what this deal meant kept him alert, not just for him, but for the hundreds of young black students he sponsored through his foundation, showing them that barriers could be broken. The flight to Chicago O'Hare was scheduled for 10:30, giving him plenty of time to make the 4 o'clock meeting with Jeffrey Williams. Marcus had specifically booked first class on national airlines, not because he needed luxury, but because he needed the space to work and the quiet to prepare. "Good morning, Mr. Washington," the national airlines check-in attendant greeted, him with a professional smile. "We're delighted to have you flying with us today. I've upgraded you to our premium first-class cabin as a thank you for your loyalty." "Thank you," Marcus replied with genuine appreciation, accepting his boarding pass. While he could easily afford the ticket, the gesture was nice, a small reminder that sometimes the world did recognize merit. The security line moved efficiently. and Marcus was soon sitting in the premium lounge, finalizing his merger presentation. He called his chief financial officer for a last-minute review of the numbers. "Everything looks solid, Marcus," said Robert Chen, his CFO of 5 years. "White Tech would be crazy to walk away from this deal." "Never underestimate the unexpected, Robert," Marcus replied, a habit born from years of being blindsided by prejudice disguised as business decisions. When boarding was announced, Marcus packed his laptop and documents into his leather briefcase and walked to the gate. He nodded politely to the flight attendants who welcomed passengers aboard, then made his way to his assigned seat, 2A, a spacious first-class window position. The first-class cabin gleamed with luxury. Wide leather seats, real wood accents, and attentive staff offering pre-flight champagne. Marcus declined the champagne, accepting still water instead. He needed a clear head for the meeting ahead. He stored his briefcase carefully under the seat in front of him, keeping the merger documents close. As other first-class passengers boarded, mostly white businessmen in suits similar to his own, Marcus noticed the subtle double takes, the quick glances that questioned his presence in this exclusive space. He had grown accustomed to these looks over the years, learning to ignore them while never forgetting what they meant. A flight attendant approached with a warm smile. Her name tag read, Veronica Miller. She was in her mid-30s with blonde, hair pulled back in a perfect bun. "Can I get you anything else before takeoff, sir?" she asked. "No, thank you, Veronica. The water is fine," Marcus replied, returning to his documents. The plane was nearly fully boarded when Marcus noticed Veronica's demeanor change. She kept glancing toward the front of the plane, her previously warm expression growing increasingly uncomfortable. Following her gaze, Marcus saw a white man in his 50s, with silver hair and an expensive watch glinting on his wrist, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with the gate agent at the aircraft door. The man gestured emphatically toward the first-class cabin, his voice rising just enough to catch fragments. "Always sit there. Standing arrangement. Do you know who I am?" Veronica approached Marcus again, her smile now tight and forced. "Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there seems to be a seating issue." Marcus looked up, his expression neutral, despite the familiar sinking feeling in his stomach. "What sort of issue? My boarding pass clearly assigns me to seat 2A. Before Veronica could respond, the silver-haired white man appeared at her side, glaring down at Marcus. "You're in my seat," he stated flatly, as though it were an indisputable fact. Marcus calmly held up his boarding pass. "I believe there's a misunderstanding. My pass assigns me to seat 2A. The man, who Marcus would later learn was Bradley Thornton, Executive Vice President at Data Shield Technologies, didn't even glance at the boarding pass. "There must be a double booking. I always have this seat on this flight. It's a standing arrangement." "I understand that's frustrating," Marcus replied, evenly, "but my ticket assigns me here. Perhaps the airline can offer you an equivalent seat." Veronica's eyes darted between the two men, clearly uncomfortable. "Let me get my supervisor," she said, hurrying away. By now, other first-class passengers were watching the interaction with poorly disguised interest. Marcus felt the weight of their stares but maintained his composure. This was far from the first time his right to occupy a space had been questioned. Moments later, Veronica returned with an older woman whose name tag identified her as Diane Reynolds, cabin supervisor. Diane barely glanced at Marcus before addressing Thornton with deference. "Mr. Thornton, I understand there's a problem with your usual seat." "This seat is always reserved for me," Thornton insisted, his voice carrying authority that came from a lifetime of never being questioned. "I have connections to the airline board. There's obviously been a mistake." Diane turned to Marcus, her expression making it clear which passenger she valued more. "Sir, it appears there's been a booking error. Would you mind moving to another seat in first class? Or we can offer you a premium economy seat with a partial refund." Marcus felt a flicker of anger, but suppressed it. "There's no booking error," he said firmly, presenting his boarding pass again. "I booked this seat weeks ago and received confirmation. I'm happy to show you the email if necessary." Diane barely glanced at the boarding pass. "I understand, sir, but Mr. Thornton is a Platinum Elite member with special arrangements." "I'm also a Platinum member," Marcus countered. "And more importantly, I have a valid ticket for this specific seat." Bradley Thornton's face reddened. "Look, I don't have time for this. I have important business in Chicago that can't wait." "As do I," Marcus replied calmly. "I have a critical meeting this afternoon." The standoff continued for another minute, with Diane clearly favoring Thornton despite the evidence in Marcus's hand. Other passengers began to shift uncomfortably, some avoiding eye contact, others watching with undisguised interest. "Sir," Diane finally said to Marcus, her tone hardening, "I need to ask you to move to another seat or deplane. You're delaying our departure." "I'm not the one causing a delay," Marcus pointed out. "I'm sitting in my assigned seat with a valid ticket." "This is ridiculous," Thornton interrupted. "I've never been treated this way on national airlines before." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on Marcus, who had experienced similar treatment countless times across various situations. Recognizing where this was heading, he discreetly took out his phone and, keeping it partially concealed by his tray table, began recording. "Final request, sir," Diane said, the threat clear in her voice. "Move to another seat or we'll need to have you escorted off the aircraft." "On what grounds?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the humiliation burning in his chest. "I have a valid ticket for this seat." Diane's response was to signal toward the front of the plane. Moments later, 2 security officers appeared, their uniforms marking them as airport security rather than police officers. "Sir, we need you to come with us," said the taller officer, whose badge identified him as James Becker. Marcus maintained his composure. "I'm not leaving my assigned seat without a valid reason. This appears to be discriminatory treatment." The second officer, Thomas Green, a stockier man with a crew cut, stepped forward. "Sir, this isn't a debate. Either you come willingly, or we'll remove you." Around him, Marcus noticed several passengers had their phones out, recording the escalating situation. Some looked concerned, others entertained, and a few appeared uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Making a split-second decision, Marcus stood slowly. "I'll leave under protest, and I want it noted that I'm being removed from a seat I legally purchased while my valid boarding pass is being ignored." But his dignified exit was not to be. As he gathered his briefcase, Officer Green grabbed his arm roughly. "Let's not make this difficult." "I'm not resisting," Marcus said, his voice remaining calm even as anger and humiliation washed over him. Disregarding his cooperation, both officers seized Marcus by the arms, their grips unnecessarily tight as they began to force him toward the exit. His briefcase tumbled to the floor, documents spilling out, critical merger papers now scattered under seats. "My documents," Marcus protested. "I need those for a meeting." His concerns were ignored as the officers dragged him forward, his expensive shoes scraping against the carpet. Marcus was acutely aware of the spectacle they were creating, a successful black man being forcibly removed to accommodate a white passenger's preferences. As they reached the aircraft door, Marcus looked back to see Bradley Thornton already settling comfortably into seat 2A, a satisfied expression on his face as Veronica rushed to offer him champagne. The walk through the terminal was one of the longest of Marcus's life. Despite his success, despite his wealth and position, in this moment, he was reduced to what society had always seen first, his skin color. And yet, even in this moment of humiliation, Marcus Washington's mind was already calculating, observing, planning. They had chosen the wrong man to make an example of. This was not the end of the story, but merely its beginning. The fluorescent lights of Chicago O'Hare International Airport cast harsh shadows as security officers James Becker and Thomas Green marched Marcus Washington through the crowded terminal. Travelers stopped to stare, some raising phones to capture the spectacle of a well-dressed black man being escorted by security. Marcus kept his head high, his face a mask of dignity despite the burning humiliation coursing through him. "I have the right to know why I'm being removed from a flight where I held a valid ticket," Marcus stated calmly, his voice betraying none of the rage building inside him. Officer Green tightened his grip on Marcus's arm. Save it for the security office, he muttered, his fingers digging into the expensive fabric of Marcus's suit. Marcus noted every detail with the precision that had made him a tech innovator. Green's badge number, the expressions of witnesses, the exact time on the terminal clock. His analytical mind never stopped working, even as his body was being physically controlled. When they reached a less crowded area of the terminal, Officer Green suddenly shoved Marcus against a wall, out of sight of most passengers, but unfortunately not away from all cameras. The impact knocked the wind from Marcus's lungs. "Listen," Green hissed, his face inches from Marcus's. "Guys like you need to learn when to follow instructions. First class isn't for everyone." The implication hung in the air between them. Officer Becker shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing to stop his partner. "I'm going to pretend you didn't just say that," Marcus replied evenly, his eyes locked with Green's. "And I suggest you remove your hands from me immediately. I've complied with your instructions despite their questionable legality." Green's face flushed with anger at being challenged. He applied more pressure, pushing Marcus harder against the wall. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm advising you that your actions are being recorded by multiple security cameras," Marcus stated, nodding toward a dome camera in the ceiling corner. "And I'll be requesting that footage." Something in Marcus's steady gaze, the confidence of a man familiar with power, made Green release him, though not without a final shove. "Keep moving," he ordered, his tone still hostile. They continued to the airport security office, a sterile room with fluorescent lighting and plastic chairs. Inside, Marcus was directed to sit while the officers conferred with a supervisor in hushed tones. Through the glass partition, Marcus could see them gesturing toward him, occasionally glancing in his direction. After several minutes, a man in a management uniform entered, his name badge identifying him as Richard Coleman, airport security manager. "Mr. Washington," Coleman began, consulting a clipboard, "you were removed from National Airlines Flight 257 for causing a disturbance and refusing crew member instructions." Marcus sat straight in his chair. "That is categorically false. I was seated in my assigned seat with a valid ticket when another passenger claimed it should be his. Rather than verify our respective tickets, the crew immediately sided with him and demanded I move. When I politely declined to give up the seat I had legally purchased, security was called." Coleman's expression remained impassive. "According to the report, you were combative and disruptive." "Is there a recording of this alleged behavior?" Marcus asked. "Because I have video showing quite the opposite." He reached for his phone, only to realize it had been confiscated along with his other belongings upon entering the security office. "Your personal items will be returned when we're finished," Coleman stated flatly. "Mr. Washington, you're not under arrest, but we need to complete an incident report before you can leave." Marcus glanced at his watch. It was now 11:45. The flight had departed without him, with his essential merger documents scattered across the first-class cabin. His 4 o'clock meeting with Jeffrey Williams, potentially worth $500 million in years of work, was in serious jeopardy. "I need to make a call to my office," Marcus said. "I was en route to an important business meeting." Coleman hesitated, then nodded. "You can use the office phone. 3 minutes." Marcus dialed his executive assistant Jamila from memory. "It's me," he said when she answered. "There's been a situation. I'm not going to make the meeting with Williams." "What?" "Marcus, he's already called twice checking your arrival time." "I was removed from my flight," Marcus explained briefly, aware of Coleman watching him closely. "Long story, but I need you to call Williams and explain there's been a travel emergency. See if he can reschedule for tomorrow, or if I can join virtually." "He specifically said this had to be in person," Jamila reminded him, concern evident in her voice. "He's got other offers on the table." Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Everything he had built was at risk. "Tell him I'll be there. I'll get another flight even if I have to charter one. And Jamila, contact Anthony. Tell him I'll need him in Chicago tonight." Anthony Jenkins had been Marcus's friend since childhood, in Harlem, and was now one of the top civil rights attorneys in the country. They hadn't spoken in months due to their busy schedules, but if anyone would understand the situation and know how to respond, it would be Anthony. "Time's up," Coleman announced. I'll call back when I can, Marcus told Jamila before hanging up. The next hour dragged as Marcus answered redundant questions, signed statements, and refuted the false narrative being constructed around the incident. Throughout the process, he maintained his professional demeanor, even as officers referred to him as boy under their breath when they thought he couldn't hear. Finally, Coleman returned with Marcus's belongings. "You're free to go, Mr. Washington. No charges will be filed, but National Airlines has the right to refuse service to disruptive passengers in the future." Marcus collected his phone and briefcase, returned to him by a gate agent who had gathered his scattered documents after his removal. He checked his phone. 27 missed calls, and the video he'd managed to record still safely stored. As he exited the security office, Marcus found a quiet corner of the terminal and played the video. It had captured everything: Thornton's entitled demand, Diane's immediate bias, the excessive force used by the officers. The audio was clear, including Thornton's muttered comment as Marcus was dragged away. "These people never know their place." Marcus's finger hovered over the delete button for a moment. Part of him wanted this humiliation to disappear, to focus solely on salvaging the White Tech merger. He had worked too hard, come too far to let this derail everything. But another part of him, the part that remembered his mother working 3 jobs, the part that had endured professors' surprise at his intelligence, the part that still got followed in high-end stores. That part knew this wasn't just about him. His phone rang again. Jeffrey Williams. "Marcus, what the hell is going on?" Williams demanded without preamble. "We have investors waiting. This meeting has been on the calendar for months." "Jeffrey, I apologize for the confusion," Marcus replied, his voice steady despite everything. "There was an incident at the airport. I'm arranging alternative transportation and will be there as soon as possible." "This isn't acceptable, Marcus," Williams said sharply. "Data Shield representatives met me for breakfast making a compelling counteroffer. They're ready to sign today." Data Shield, Bradley Thornton's company. The connection clicked in Marcus's mind like a key turning in a lock. This hadn't been random. "Jeffrey, I've been working toward this merger for 10 years, Marcus said. "I'm asking for a few hours' grace. There are aspects of Data Shield's business practices you should be aware of before making any decisions." After a tense silence, Williams replied, "You have until 6, not a minute later." The call ended, and Marcus immediately dialed Anthony Jenkins's direct line. "Marcus Washington," Anthony answered warmly. "It's been too long, brother." Jamila said, "There's an emergency." "I need your help, Anthony," Marcus said, his voice finally betraying a fraction of the stress he felt. "And I need to ask you something. When they come for you, when they remind you that no matter what you've achieved, they still see your skin first, do you let it go to protect what you've built, or do you fight even if it might cost you everything?" Anthony's response was immediate and resolute. "You document it, you strategize, and you make them regret the day they decided you were less than. This time, Marcus, they picked the wrong black man." For the first time since being dragged off the plane, Marcus Washington smiled. The polished mahogany conference table in Anthony Jenkins's downtown Chicago law office gleamed under recessed lighting as Marcus finished recounting the events of the morning. The video from his phone played on a large wall-mounted screen, the images crisp enough to clearly identify everyone involved. Anthony leaned back in his leather chair, his expression a mixture of anger and strategic calculation. At 46, he had built his reputation defending high-profile civil rights cases, earning both respect and resentment in legal circles. His tailored charcoal suit and the corner office with views of Lake Michigan spoke of his success. But the fire in his eyes revealed the Harlem kid who had never forgotten where he came from. "They handed you a winning case on a silver platter," Anthony said, pausing the video on Bradley Thornton's smug face. "The question is, what do you want to do with it?" Marcus's exhaustion was evident in the slight slump of his shoulders, but his voice remained firm. "I want accountability, but I also need to save this merger. White Tech won't wait much longer." Anthony nodded, pressing an intercom button. "Bring in the team." Moments later, 3 people entered the conference room. Anthony made introductions. "Marcus, Meet Sofia Rodriguez, our social media and public relations specialist, James Chen, corporate law expert, and Kiara Johnson, who specializes in civil rights litigation. Sophia, a sharp-eyed woman in her early 30s, immediately began taking notes on her tablet. This video is digital gold, Mr. Washington. The optics are undeniable. James Chen adjusted his glasses as he studied documents from Marcus's briefcase. The timing with your white tech merger is suspicious. Have you considered this might be corporate sabotage with racial prejudice as the weapon? Marcus's eyes narrowed. Bradley Thornton. I recognized the name but couldn't place it until Jeffrey Williams mentioned Data Shield made a counteroffer. This morning. Kiara Johnson, whose quiet demeanor belied a reputation for ferocity in courtrooms, pulled up information on her laptop. Bradley Thornton, Executive Vice President at Data Shield Technologies, your direct competitor. She scrolled. Further. And look at this. 3 sealed settlements for workplace discrimination in the past 5 years. Do you think this was planned corporate sabotage or an unfortunate coincidence? Drop a comment with number 1 if you believe this was a calculated move by Data Shield, or number 2 if you think Thornton just happened to be on the same flight. Like and subscribe if you've ever witnessed discrimination disguised as company policy in your workplace. Now, what would you do if you were in Marcus's position? Would you prioritize the business deal or fight for justice? Let's see what strategy Marcus and his team develop. This wasn't random, Marcus concluded, scrolling through emails on his phone. The merger announcement hasn't gone public yet, but industry insiders have been speculating. Thornton must have found out I was flying to Chicago today. Anthony paced the length of the conference room. So we're looking at a 2-front battle, the civil rights violation and potential corporate espionage. We need to approach this carefully. Sophia tapped her stylus against her tablet. The court of public opinion moves faster than any legal proceeding. If we release this video strategically, national airlines will be scrambling to settle within hours. But that could undermine the white tech deal, James cautioned. If Marcus becomes the center of a viral racial incident, Jeffrey Williams might get cold feet about the public association. Marcus checked his watch. I have less than 4 hours to get across town for that meeting. The merger has to be the priority. It represents jobs for hundreds of people, including many minorities we've specifically recruited and mentored. Kiara's voice cut through the debate. Why choose? This isn't just about one incident or one merger. This is about changing how the game is played. She turned to Marcus. You built CyberShield from nothing despite every obstacle. You've earned your seat at the table. Why not use this situation to secure both victories? The room fell silent as everyone considered her words. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of him wanted to focus solely on salvaging the merger, the practical business move. Another part recognized the larger significance of what had happened to him today. If I let this go, he said finally, what message does that send to every young black professional watching? That even when you reach the top, you still have to swallow your dignity to succeed. Anthony placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. The system counts on people making that exact calculation. Stay quiet, don't rock the boat, protect what little you've managed to gain. But I didn't get where I am by playing it safe, Marcus continued, his resolve strengthening. And I didn't build CyberShield just for myself. It was always about creating pathways for those coming after me. Sophia was already sketching a communication strategy on her tablet. We approach this in phases. First, we need leverage with national airlines to get them to acknowledge fault without a protracted legal battle. Meanwhile, James added, we gather evidence on the connection between Thornton and the airline incident. If we can prove corporate sabotage, White Tech would have every reason to avoid Data Shield and proceed with your merger. Kiara opened a legal document on her laptop. I'll prepare the framework for legal action against national airlines, the security company, and Thornton personally. Multiple causes of action: discrimination, assault, defamation, tortious interference with business relations. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from Jamila. Williams called again, getting impatient, says Data Shield offering 2% better terms. The pressure was mounting. But for the first time since being dragged off the plane, Marcus felt in control again. Sophia, who's the most trustworthy journalist you know? Someone who'll report this story accurately without sensationalizing it. Zoe Campbell at the National Times, Sophia replied without hesitation. Pulitzer finalist last year for her series on corporate accountability. She'll treat this with the gravity it deserves. Call her, Marcus decided. Offer an exclusive with very specific parameters. I want this story to break while I'm meeting with Williams. Anthony raised an eyebrow. Bold move. You're going to leverage the public response in real time during your negotiation? Exactly, Marcus confirmed. When the story breaks, Data Shield's stock will take an immediate hit. Their connection to Thornton will raise questions about their business ethics. Meanwhile, I'll be sitting across from Jeffrey, offering him a chance to be on the right side of the story. James looked concerned. You're playing a dangerous game. If Williams gets spooked by the controversy, then he's not the partner I thought he was, Marcus interrupted. This merger isn't just about market share. It's about creating the most diverse leadership team in tech. If Jeffrey can't stand with me when I've been wronged this publicly, what happens when we face more subtle challenges together? Kiara nodded approvingly. Sometimes the strongest negotiating position is simply standing firm in your truth. Anthony began outlining action items on a whiteboard. We move on multiple fronts simultaneously. Sophia works with Zoe Campbell on the media narrative. James investigates the Thornton Data Shield connection. Kiara prepares our legal strategy. I'll handle direct communication with National Airlines General Counsel. As the team dispersed, to execute the plan, Marcus remained at the conference table, reviewing the White Tech merger documents. Anthony paused at the door. You know this could all backfire, he warned his friend. You could lose the merger and end up in a years-long legal battle. Marcus looked up, his expression resolute. My mother didn't work 3 jobs so I could someday be successful enough to tolerate being treated like a second-class citizen. She did it so I could change the system that tried to keep us down. Anthony smiled. That's the Marcus Washington I remember from Harlem, the one who never backed down, even when the odds were stacked against him. I'm still that person, Marcus replied, straightening his tie as he prepared to head to the White Tech meeting. I've just gotten better at calculating the odds, and today, I like our chances. Zoe Campbell's fingers flew across her keyboard, her dark eyes intense as she crafted the opening paragraphs of what would become the most read article of her career. The National Times downtown Chicago office hummed with the usual deadline, energy, but the veteran journalist remained focused solely on the explosive story unfolding on her screen. The headline was already set. Tech CEO forcibly removed, racial bias or business sabotage. Below it, a still image from Marcus Washington's video showed him being dragged from his seat, dignity intact despite the humiliation. Zoe had verified every detail, cross-referenced statements, and most importantly, watched the unedited video Marcus had provided. As a black woman who had clawed her way to journalistic prominence, she recognized the familiar pattern of bias, but approached the story with the objectivity that had earned her a Pulitzer nomination. 5 minutes until we go live, her editor called across the newsroom. Legal cleared it? Triple-checked, Zoe confirmed. We've reached out to all parties for comment. National Airlines provided a boilerplate response about investigating the incident. Data Shield and Bradley Thornton haven't responded. At precisely 3:30 p.m., 30 minutes before Marcus Washington's rescheduled meeting with Jeffrey Williams, the story went live on the National Times website, accompanied by a carefully edited version of the video that clearly showed the discrimination without being exploitative. Within minutes, the story began to spread like wildfire across social media platforms. Justice for Marcus started trending almost immediately, followed by What Are National Airlines Bias and What Are Corporate Racism. News alerts buzzed on smartphones across the country. Cable news networks scrambled to cover the developing story. In the backseat of a luxury car heading to White Tech's Chicago headquarters, Marcus watched the initial response on his tablet. Sofia Rodriguez provided updates via text. National Times article 50,000 views in first 10 minutes. Video shares doubling every 3 minutes. National Airlines stock down 7% already. Requests for interviews from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, Bloomberg. Marcus set aside the tablet and straightened his tie, preparing for the meeting ahead. The driver pulled up to an impressive glass tower in downtown Chicago. "We've arrived, Mr. Washington." In her Manhattan office, National Airlines CEO Franklin Pierce stared at the catastrophic stock ticker on his wall screen. The company had lost 15% of its value in under an hour. His phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. "Get me everything on this incident," he shouted to his executive assistant, "and find out who the hell Bradley Thornton is and why my flight crew gave him preferential treatment." Across town at DataShield's headquarters, CEO Michael Harrison slammed his office door shut as he got off the phone with their biggest investor. "Find Thornton now," he barked into his intercom, "and prepare a statement distancing us from his personal actions." But Bradley Thornton wasn't answering his phone. He sat in a Chicago hotel bar, watching his face appear on the overhead television as commentators dissected his role in the incident. His third whiskey did nothing to calm his growing panic. At O'Hare International Airport, flight attendant Veronica Miller was called into a meeting with HR. Security officers James Becker and Thomas Green received notification of administrative leave pending investigation. Cabin supervisor Diane Reynolds sat in her car in the employee parking lot, deleting text messages from her phone. Meanwhile, in Anthony Jenkins's law office, the team monitored the explosion of public interest with strategic satisfaction. Social media response is overwhelming, Sophia reported. 93% supportive of Marcus. Calls for National Airlines boycott gaining traction. Kiara looked up from her legal drafts. "I've received calls from 3 major civil rights organizations offering support and resources." James Chen entered the conference room, his expression triumphant. "We found it." A series of text messages between Thornton and the flight attendant Veronica Miller. They know each other. She was instructed to create a seating issue if Marcus boarded. Anthony's eyes widened. "That's the smoking gun. Get this to Marcus immediately. He's about to meet with Williams." The gleaming conference room on the 40th floor of White Tech Industries headquarters offered a panoramic view of Chicago's skyline. Jeffrey Williams, a trim Asian American man in his 50s, checked his watch impatiently as his executive team arranged documents around the table. "Mr. Washington has arrived," his assistant announced. Jeffrey's expression was cool as Marcus entered. "You're cutting it close, Marcus. We have investors waiting on our decision." "Thank you for your flexibility, Jeffrey," Marcus replied calmly, setting his briefcase on the table. "Before we begin, I should mention there's a situation developing that may impact our discussions." Jeffrey frowned. "What kind of situation?" Before Marcus could respond, one of White Tech's executives glanced at his phone and exclaimed, "Holy shit. Marcus, is this you?" He turned his screen to show the viral video now playing on every major news site. Jeffrey's expression shifted from annoyance to shock as he watched. "This happened to you today? This is why you were delayed?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, and there's more to the story that isn't public yet." He slid his phone across the table, displaying the text messages James had just forwarded. "Bradley Thornton, the man who had me removed, is Executive VP at DataShield. This was corporate sabotage designed to make me miss this meeting." Jeffrey's face hardened as he read the messages. "They offered us a deal this morning, said you were unreliable and might not show. They engineered a situation to make that appear true," Marcus explained. "The question now is, do you want to partner with CyberShield, a company committed to integrity and innovation, or with people who would resort to these tactics?" As the meeting continued behind closed doors, the public response continued to build. National Airlines issued a hastily crafted statement. "National Airlines takes allegations of discrimination very seriously. We are investigating the incident involving Mr. Washington and have placed the employees involved on administrative leave pending review. We are committed to providing a respectful environment for all passengers." The statement was immediately criticized for its vagueness and lack of direct apology. The airline stock continued to plummet. DataShield released their own statement an hour later. The actions of Executive Vice President Bradley Thornton appeared to have been taken in his personal capacity and do not reflect the values or policies of DataShield Technologies. We are conducting an internal investigation and will take appropriate action. Social media users quickly pointed out the statement's careful wording appear to have been, and its failure to apologize to Marcus Washington directly. Boycott DataShield began trending. Back at Anthony's office, the team received an unexpected call. A woman identifying herself as Emma Blackwell, a 72-year-old retired teacher, claimed to have been seated near Marcus on the flight and had recorded additional footage of the incident. "I was in seat 3B, she explained. "What happened to that gentleman was disgraceful. I've been haunted by not speaking up during the incident, but I did record it. And I heard things the official report doesn't mention." Sophia immediately arranged for a courier to collect Emma's phone footage. When it arrived and they viewed it, the recording captured clear audio of Bradley Thornton saying to Veronica Miller, "I told you to handle this before he boarded. Michael will be furious if this doesn't work." Michael Harrison, Anthony realized. DataShield's CEO, this goes all the way to the top. As evening fell over Chicago, Marcus emerged from White Tech headquarters, his expression unreadable as he slipped into the waiting car. His phone immediately rang. Anthony checking on the outcome. "So?" Anthony asked. "Deal or no deal?" Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "The merger is proceeding, with improved terms." Jeffrey was furious about DataShield's tactics. "He's making a public statement tomorrow about corporate ethics and announcing our partnership." "That's a win," Anthony said. "But National Airlines is still trying to control the narrative. They've offered a private settlement, 7 figures with an NDA, of course." Marcus's expression hardened. "No deal. This isn't about money. It's about changing how business is done. Tell them I want structural changes, not hush money." As his car navigated through evening traffic, Marcus stared out at the city lights, thinking about how quickly life could change. This morning, he had been a respected CEO headed to an important meeting. By midday, he had been reduced to a man defined solely by his skin color, and now he had become something else entirely, a symbol in a larger fight. His phone buzzed, with a text from his mother. "Saw the news. So proud of you for standing your ground. Your father would be too." The simple message brought unexpected tears to Marcus's eyes. His father, a community activist who had died when Marcus was just 10, had always told him, "They can take everything from you except your dignity. Never let them have that." Today, Marcus had held on to his dignity. Tomorrow, he would use it as a weapon in a fight much bigger than one airline seat. The luxury Peninsula Hotel suite overlooking Michigan Avenue had been transformed into a war room. Screens displayed real-time social media analytics, news coverage, and stock market movements. Marcus Washington stood at the center, reviewing strategy with his expanded team on the morning after the National Times story broke. National Airlines stock down 23% at opening bell, James Chen reported. They've lost over $600 million in market value overnight. Sofia Rodriguez scrolled through her media monitoring dashboard. "Your CNN interview has 17 million views already. The comments are overwhelmingly supportive." Marcus nodded, buttoning the jacket of his fresh suit. He had appeared on CNN's morning show just hours earlier, his calm dignity and articulate responses creating a striking contrast to National Airlines' fumbling corporate statements. "I didn't set out to become the face of corporate discrimination," he had told the interviewer. "I was simply a passenger with a valid ticket who was removed because someone else, someone white, felt entitled to my seat." But this incident reveals a systemic problem that extends far beyond one flight or one airline. His poised performance had resonated with viewers across the political spectrum. The hashtag #EIStandWithMarcus was trending globally. National Airlines CEO Franklin Pierce has requested a private meeting, Anthony announced, looking up from his phone. His representative says he wants to resolve the situation amicably. Marcus straightened his tie. "Set it for noon. Let's hear what he has to say." At precisely 12 o'clock, Franklin Pierce arrived with his general counsel and chief communications officer. The airline's CEO was a tall white man in his 60s, with the weathered confidence of someone unaccustomed to apologizing. After brief introductions, Pierce leaned forward in his chair. Mr. Washington, this situation has spiraled out of control. I want to personally express my regret for your experience on our airline. Regret isn't the same as accountability, Marcus replied evenly. Pierce's jaw tightened. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for your inconvenience and any emotional distress. $2 million with the understanding that we can all move forward from this unfortunate incident. The airline's general counsel slid a document across the table. We've prepared a standard confidentiality agreement, an NDA. Anthony interjected, not touching the document. You want to pay for silence. Pierce adjusted his gold cufflinks. This is standard practice in dispute resolution. It protects all parties. Marcus studied the airline CEO's face. It protects your airline while doing nothing to address the underlying problems. I'm not interested in your money, Mr. Pierce. Then what do you want? Pierce asked, frustration seeping into his voice. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Comprehensive anti-bias training for all customer-facing staff, an executive diversity program with measurable goals and public reporting, and no confidentiality agreement. I want transparency about what happened and how you're addressing it. Pierce's face reddened. That's completely unreasonable. You're trying to dictate how I run my company. No, Marcus corrected him. I'm offering you a chance to transform a crisis into an opportunity. Your stock is in freefall. Public trust is shattered. You can fight a lengthy public legal battle that you'll ultimately lose, or you can become an industry leader in addressing discrimination. The airline executives exchanged glances. Pierce's communications officer whispered urgently in his ear. We'll need time to consider these demands, Pierce finally said. Take all the time you need, Marcus replied, but understand that every day you delay, public pressure will increase. The footage speaks for itself. After the airline executives departed, Kiara updated the team on their expanding legal strategy. We've identified 6 previous complaints against Supervisor Diane Reynolds for discriminatory treatment of minority passengers. All were settled quietly with NDAs. And we've confirmed Thornton's connection to the flight attendant, James added. Veronica Miller is his cousin by marriage. She's deleted her social media accounts, but we found photos of them together at family events. Marcus's phone rang. Jeffrey Williams calling from White Tech headquarters. The merger announcement is drafted, Jeffrey reported. But we have a problem. Data Shield is claiming you orchestrated this entire incident as a publicity stunt. They're trying to poison the well with our investors. Marcus's expression darkened. They're getting desperate. We need to move quickly, Jeffrey urged. They've launched an aggressive media campaign. Their stock recovered slightly after they announced Thornton's leave of absence. Understood. We'll accelerate our timeline. After ending the call, Marcus addressed his team. Data Shield is counterattacking. We need to consolidate the evidence connecting them to this incident. Sophia looked up from her laptop. I've been monitoring airline employee forums. There's chatter about Diane Reynolds having connections to Data Shield's board. One employee claims she received special instructions regarding your flight. Follow that lead, Marcus directed. And Anthony, arrange a meeting with influential Black business leaders in Chicago. We need to build broader support. As the team dispersed to their tasks, Marcus's security detail, hired after he began receiving anonymous threats, approached with concern. Sir, hotel security detected unauthorized electronic devices in your suite during their sweep. Listening. Devices. Marcus showed no surprise. Corporate espionage is part of the game now. Let's use it to our advantage. He raised his voice slightly. Make sure everyone understands our next public move will be announced tomorrow morning. That evening, Marcus met privately with 7 prominent Black executives from various industries in a secure conference room at Anthony's law firm. No phones or devices were permitted. What you're doing is necessary, said Regina Carter, CEO of a major healthcare corporation. But make no mistake, they'll try to destroy you for it. I faced similar tactics when I sued my former employer for promotion discrimination. Walter Bridges, a venture capital pioneer, nodded in agreement. They'll dig into your past, looking for anything to discredit you. They'll try to paint you as angry, unreasonable, playing the race card. I'm prepared for that, Marcus assured them. But I need your public support when the time comes. Too often we fight these battles alone because others fear becoming targets themselves. One by one, the executives pledged their support. Their collective influence represented billions in market power and thousands of employees. Later that night, as Marcus reviewed security footage from hotel cameras, his phone buzzed with an alert from Sophia. Bradley Thornton just gave an interview to Business Today, claims you refused reasonable accommodations and became aggressive. Marcus watched the interview clip, noting Thornton's practiced concern and carefully worded allegations. I simply asked if he would mind moving to another first-class seat, and he became confrontational, Thornton claimed, his expression a mask of false sincerity. While the interview played, Anthony entered with urgent news. We found the mole. Jeremy Collins has been feeding information to Data Shield for months. Marcus felt a cold wave of betrayal. Jeremy was his vice president of operations, someone he had personally mentored for 5 years. You're certain? Anthony handed him a tablet showing email exchanges between Jeremy and Michael Harrison, Data Shield's CEO. He's been sharing confidential merger details, executive meeting notes, even your travel schedule. That's how they knew I'd be on that specific flight, Marcus realized. Set up a meeting with Jeremy tomorrow morning. Don't let him know we're on to him. The next day dawned with fresh challenges. National Airlines had rejected Marcus's proposed terms, offering instead a larger settlement with the same NDA requirements. Data Shield's counter-narrative was gaining traction in certain business publications, and Whitetech's investors were growing nervous about the escalating corporate warfare. At 9 a.m., Jeremy Collins entered Marcus's hotel suite, his expression a practiced mask of concern. You wanted to see me, Marcus? I've been so worried since this whole incident began. Marcus studied the man he had trusted, the subtle tells of nervousness now obvious. Have a seat, Jeremy. I wanted to discuss our contingency plans for the merger. Data Shield seems to have inside information. Jeremy's laugh was slightly too quick. Probably just good intelligence work on their part. You know how this industry operates. I do, Marcus agreed, sliding a folder across the table. That's why I had our security team trace the information leaks. The color drained from Jeremy's face as he opened the folder to find copies of his own emails to Data Shield. Why? Marcus asked simply. Jeremy's facade crumbled. They approached me 6 months ago, offered triple my salary, equity options, said I'd never reach the top at CyberShield because you were building a diversity showcase rather than promoting on merit. And you believe that, Marcus stated, disappointment evident in his voice. Despite watching me promote people based solely on performance for 10 years. It wasn't personal, Jeremy insisted weakly. Betrayal is always personal, Marcus countered. You're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. Whether we pursue criminal charges depends on your cooperation now. After a shaken Jeremy provided full details of his communications with Data Shield, Marcus convened his team for a strategy session. We now have concrete evidence linking Data Shield's CEO directly to the airline incident, he announced. It's time to go on the offensive. The corporate battle had escalated beyond a single incident of discrimination to expose a web of corruption, espionage, and systemic bias. And Marcus Washington, once simply a tech innovator, had become the unlikely champion in a fight much larger than one airline seat. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:17 a.m. as Marcus Washington stared at the ceiling of his hotel suite. Despite physical exhaustion, sleep remained elusive. The weight of the past 4 days pressed down on him like a physical presence. What had begun as a business trip had transformed into a very public battle against corporate discrimination that was consuming every aspect of his life. His phone buzzed with yet another news alert. Data Shield CEO denies orchestrating discrimination. Incident questions Washington's motives. Marcus set the phone aside and rubbed his eyes. The constant barrage of media coverage, strategy sessions, and legal consultations had left him operating on minimal sleep and maximum caffeine. The physical and emotional toll was becoming evident in the dark circles under his eyes and the tension headaches that had become his constant companion. As he lay in the darkness, unwelcome memories surfaced. Incidents of discrimination he had pushed aside throughout his life in order to move forward. The science teacher who seemed surprised when he aced every test. The college admissions officer who needed to verify his perfect SAT scores. The venture capitalist who would only speak to his white co-founder during pitches. The luxury car salesman who asked if he could afford the vehicle he was interested in. Each individual incident had been manageable, unpleasant reminders of persistent bias, but not insurmountable obstacles. Marcus had always chosen to focus on excellence rather than grievance, believing his success would speak for itself. But now, lying awake in a Chicago hotel room at 3 in the morning, he wondered about the cumulative cost of all those swallowed moments of humiliation. His phone rang, startling him. Only one person would call at this hour. "Mom, is everything okay?" He answered immediately. Elaine Washington's voice carried the wisdom of her 73 years. "I should be asking you that question. I saw you on the news again. You look tired, baby." Marcus smiled despite himself. No matter his achievements or age to Elaine, he would always be her baby. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a lot happening." She replied, unconvinced. "You know, this reminds me of when your father was fighting the housing discrimination case back in '82. He couldn't sleep then either." Marcus rarely heard his mother speak of his father's activism. The pain of his early death had always made those conversations difficult. "What did Dad do?" he asked quietly. "He got up and wrote," Elaine said. "Letters, speeches, plans. Said if insomnia wanted to rob him of rest, he'd rob it of victory by using those hours. But he also knew when to rest his sword, Marcus. Even the strongest warriors need sleep. Have you ever had to choose between your personal well-being and fighting for what's right? Comment number 1 if you've had to make sacrifices for your principles, or number 2 if you think self-care should always come first. Like and subscribe if you believe one person's stand against discrimination can create meaningful change. What would you do if you were in Marcus's position, with threats mounting and your life's work at risk? Let's see how Marcus navigates these personal challenges. After the call ended, Marcus rose and moved to the suite's desk. His mother's advice resonated. If sleep wouldn't come, perhaps the time could be productive. He opened his laptop and began writing a personal statement, not for the media or legal proceedings, but to clarify his own thoughts. As dawn broke over Chicago, Marcus's security team alerted him to a concerning development. The threats that had begun as anonymous online comments had escalated to specific messages sent to his company email. Some included personal details that suggested surveillance. "We've found listening devices in both your hotel rooms so far," his head of security reported, "and someone attempted to access the hotel's keycard system overnight." Marcus nodded, processing this information with the same analytical approach he applied to business challenges. "Increase the team and sweep all meeting locations in advance. No electronic devices in strategy sessions." The mounting security concerns created yet another layer of stress. Marcus now traveled with bodyguards, changed hotels daily, and had limited his public appearances. His normal life, running his company, mentoring young tech talents, even his morning jog, had been suspended indefinitely. By mid-morning, reports from Cyber Shield headquarters brought additional worries. The Utsi company's stock had fluctuated wildly as investors reacted to the ongoing controversy. Several board members had expressed concerns about Marcus's focus being diverted from operations during a critical merger period. "The quarterly projections are solid," his CFO Robert Chen assured him during a secure video call. "But some board members are questioning whether this fight is worth the potential damage to the merger." Marcus felt a flash of frustration. "The merger is proceeding. Jeffrey Williams and I spoke this morning." "Yes, but Data Shield is lobbying white tech investors hard," Robert countered. "They're painting you as a liability, someone using a regrettable incident to pursue a personal agenda." After the call ended, Marcus stared out the window at the Chicago skyline. He had built Cyber Shield from nothing into a billion-dollar company. Now, his single-minded determination to fight discrimination threatened everything he had achieved. Was it worth it? His phone chimed with a calendar alert. a scheduled meeting with young black tech entrepreneurs at a local innovation hub. His instinct was to cancel. Security concerns, pressing legal matters, merger complications all provided ready excuses. But something inside him resisted. With enhanced security measures in place, Marcus kept the appointment. In a small conference room, he met with 7 young founders, their faces lighting up when he entered. "Thank you for coming, especially now," said Darnell Jackson, a 23-year-old developer working on encryption technology. "What you're doing means everything to us." For the next hour, Marcus listened as they shared their experiences. The funding rejections with thinly veiled bias, the assumptions about their capabilities, the isolation in predominantly white tech spaces. Their stories echoed his own from decades earlier, a sobering reminder that despite his individual success, systemic barriers remained firmly in place. "How do you handle it?" asked Aisha Okafor, whose AI startup had secured modest seed funding despite stellar credentials. "The constant need to prove yourself while watching less qualified people advance?" Marcus considered her question carefully. "For years, I focused solely on excellence, believing if I built something undeniably valuable, bias would become irrelevant. And that strategy served me well in many ways. But I've come to realize that individual success doesn't change the system. At some point, you have to decide whether to accept the world as it is or fight to change it. Even if that fight costs you everything?" Darnell asked. The question hung in the air, reflecting Marcus's own late-night doubts. Before he could respond, his security team signaled urgently from the doorway. Outside the building, a media frenzy had erupted. Bradley Thornton had given another interview, this time claiming Marcus had a history of playing the race card and had orchestrated the plane incident for publicity. News vans lined the street, hoping to catch Marcus's response. As his security team escorted him through a back exit, Marcus's phone buzzed with an urgent message from Jeffrey Williams. "Data Shield making final push with our investors. Need to announce merger immediately or deal in jeopardy. 24-hour deadline." The pressure was mounting from all sides. Back in his secure vehicle, Marcus called Anthony for an update on the legal front. "National Airlines made another offer," Anthony reported. $5 million, still with an NDA. "And Thornton's going on the offensive. His team is digging into your past, looking for anything they can use." "Let them look," Marcus replied, though. The thought of having his life scrutinized for potential weapons against him was deeply unsettling. "What about our evidence connecting Data Shield to the incident?" "We're getting closer. Emma Blackwell, the passenger who recorded additional footage, wants to meet. Says she has more information she didn't feel comfortable sharing electronically." When Marcus returned to his hotel, he found the elderly white woman waiting in a secure conference room, her hands clutching her purse nervously. Emma Blackwell was in her 70s with silver hair and the dignified bearing of a retired educator. "Mr. Washington," she began, "I've been struggling with whether to come forward. At my age, I prefer to avoid controversy." She took a deep breath. "But I couldn't sleep knowing what I witnessed and staying silent." Emma explained that she had been seated directly behind Bradley Thornton on the flight. "Before you boarded, I overheard him on a phone call. He said, 'Don't worry, Michael, I'll make sure he never makes that meeting.' And then when the confrontation happened, he was recording it himself, smiling when they dragged you away." Her voice trembled as she continued. "I should have spoken up during the incident, but I was afraid. And that's been the story of my life. I was young during the civil rights movement, and I stood by silently then too. I've regretted that silence for 50 years. Marcus was moved by her courage in coming forward now. "Your testimony could be crucial, Ms. Blackwell. Would you be willing to make a formal statement?" "That's why I'm here," she said firmly. "I'm tired of being silent when I witness injustice. Better late than never, I suppose." Emma's video evidence and testimony provided the missing link connecting Data Shield CEO Michael Harrison directly to the incident. Combined with the information from Jeremy Collins and the airline employee forums, a clear picture emerged of corporate sabotage motivated by both competitive interests and racial bias. That evening, as Marcus prepared for a midnight strategy session with his core team, He faced his reflection in the bathroom mirror. The man looking back appeared older than he had just days ago. The constant stress, the security threats, the betrayal by a trusted colleague, the pressure from investors, all had exacted a visible toll. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was this battle worth the personal cost? Would it really change anything? Systemic, or just drain him of the energy needed to run his company effectively? His phone buzzed with a text from his mother, a photo of his father at a community rally in Harlem, 1980. The simple message read, "He was tired too, but never sorry." Marcus straightened his shoulders and left to meet his team. The path forward was difficult and uncertain, but the alternative, accepting injustice to protect his personal comfort, was no longer an option he could live with. The secure conference room in Anthony Jenkins's law firm buzzed with focused energy at midnight. Marcus Washington stood before a whiteboard covered with flowcharts and timelines, his exhaustion temporarily eclipsed by strategic determination. Around the table sat his core team, augmented now by CyberShield's top technical talent, who had flown in from San Francisco that evening. "We've been playing defense," Marcus announced, capping a marker. "That changes tonight. DataShield orchestrated this discrimination incident as corporate sabotage. Now we use what we do best, technology, to expose the full extent of their operation." Melissa Chung, CyberShield's chief technology officer, opened her laptop. "We've developed a forensic analysis plan that stays within legal boundaries while following the digital breadcrumbs." "Completely legal," Anthony emphasized. "We cannot and will not engage in any hacking or unauthorized access. That would undermine everything we're fighting for." Marcus nodded. "We don't need to break laws to find the truth. DataShield has been sloppy because they never expected to be caught." Over the next hours, the team implemented a sophisticated cyber investigation. Using publicly available data, information provided by former DataShield employees, and legitimate business intelligence methods, they began mapping connections between DataShield and national airlines. By dawn, they had discovered troubling patterns. 3 national airlines board members have significant investments in DataShield subsidiaries, Melissa reported. "And look at this. Diane Reynolds, the supervisor who had you removed, has a brother-in-law who works as a director in DataShield's corporate security division. Financial traces show irregular payments from a DataShield shell company to consulting firms associated with several national airlines executives," added Robert Chen, examining banking records obtained through legal channels. The investigation expanded beyond the single incident to reveal what appeared to be a systematic corporate espionage operation. DataShield had apparently used similar tactics against other competitors, though none had involved the racial element that made Marcus's case so explosive. "This raises potential RICO implications," Anthony noted, referring to the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, pattern of organized illegal activity across corporate entities. As the investigation progressed, unexpected allies emerged. James Becker, one of the security officers involved in removing Marcus from the plane, contacted Anthony's office. "I've been placed on administrative leave and told to stay quiet," Becker explained during a recorded interview. "But what happened that day wasn't right. We were specifically instructed to make an example of Mr. Washington if he didn't comply immediately." "Who gave those instructions?" Anthony asked. "They came through our supervisor, but he indicated they originated from much higher up. Said this passenger was causing problems for important people and needed to be taught respect." Similarly, a junior flight attendant who had been working with Veronica Miller came forward with crucial information. "Veronica received a call before the flight and afterward told me to be ready for a situation in first class. She said it came from management but was acting weird about it." By mid-morning, Marcus received another urgent call from Jeffrey Williams. The White Tech CEO sounded strained. "Marcus, we're down to the wire. DataShield has made a final offer to our board, 5% better than yours with guaranteed regulatory approval. They're leveraging political connections my investors can't ignore." "Can you hold them off until this afternoon?" Marcus asked. "We've uncovered significant evidence of corporate malfeasance that will change the equation. The board meets at 3. "That's your deadline," Jeffrey replied bluntly. The pressure intensified when National Airlines CEO Franklin Pierce made a final settlement offer, $10 million with the same strict confidentiality requirements. "This is our final attempt at amicable resolution," his general counsel stated. "After this, we'll be forced to defend ourselves by all available means." The implied threat was clear. They would attack Marcus's character, business practices, and history if he didn't accept their terms. As noon approached, Marcus faced a crucial decision point. The evidence they had gathered was compelling, but not yet comprehensive. Releasing it prematurely might undermine their legal strategy. Waiting too long could cost him the White Tech merger and allow DataShield to further control the narrative. "We need to consolidate what we have and prepare for a major press conference," Marcus decided. "Schedule it for 2 o'clock, 1 hour before the White Tech board meeting." Anthony looked concerned. "That's aggressive timing. Are you sure you want to go public before we've completed the investigation?" "We have enough to establish the pattern," Marcus replied. "And sometimes the best defense is a strong offense." As the team prepared for the press conference, DataShield launched a preemptive strike. Their legal department issued cease and desist letters, threatening defamation lawsuits if Marcus or his representatives made any public claims linking them to the airline incident. Simultaneously, they released a statement announcing Bradley Thornton's resignation to pursue other opportunities, effectively creating distance between his actions and the company. National Airlines CEO Franklin Pierce made one last desperate attempt to prevent the press conference. He requested an urgent private meeting with Marcus, arriving at Anthony's office just an hour before the scheduled media event. "You're making a grave mistake," Pierce warned, his previous corporate poise replaced by barely concealed panic. "This won't just damage National Airlines. It will harm the entire industry and thousands of innocent employees. I'm not responsible for the consequences of discrimination your company enabled," Marcus replied evenly. "I offered you a chance to address this constructively. You chose to offer money for silence instead." "Be reasonable," Pierce urged. "What happened to you was unfortunate, but turning it into a crusade against corporate America won't solve anything. Take the settlement, focus on your merger, move on." Marcus studied the airline CEO, a powerful man unaccustomed to not getting his way. "That's what you're counting on, isn't it? That the potential damage to my business interests will eventually outweigh my commitment to accountability. That's the calculation you expect every minority executive to make when faced with discrimination. Swallow your dignity to protect what you've built." "It's just pragmatism," Pierce insisted. "Business reality." "No," Marcus countered, rising to end the meeting. "It's how systemic discrimination perpetuates itself, but not today." As Pierce departed, Marcus took a moment alone in Anthony's office to center himself. The past 5 days had been the most challenging of his professional life. He had lost a trusted colleague to betrayal, put a historic merger at risk, faced threats to his personal safety, and endured public scrutiny of every aspect of his life and business. Anthony found him there, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. "Press room is ready. Full house. Every major network and publication. Are you prepared for this?" Marcus straightened his tie. "When I was 10, my father took me to a community board meeting in Harlem. A developer wanted to tear down affordable housing to build luxury condos. Everyone knew it was wrong, but one by one, community leaders were bought off or intimidated into silence. My father was the only one who stood up and spoke the truth, even when it cost him contracts for his small construction business." He turned to face his friend. He told me afterward, "Son, there are moments in life when you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. The kind who does what's easy, or the kind who does what's right. This is one of those moments." Anthony nodded, understanding the weight of the decision. "Then let's go make your father proud." The press conference room at the Chicago Marriott downtown was filled beyond capacity. Camera crews from every major network jockeyed for position, while journalists from publications ranging from the Wall Street Journal to TechCrunch to social media outlets claimed every available seat. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. The Marcus Washington story had captivated the nation, transcending business news to become a cultural flashpoint about race, power, and accountability in corporate America. At precisely 2 o'clock, Marcus Washington entered through a side door, flanked by Anthony Jenkins and his legal team. He approached the podium with the quiet confidence that had characterized his public appearances throughout the crisis. Despite the pressure of the past 5 days, he appeared composed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, though close observers might notice the slight fatigue around his eyes. "Good afternoon," he began, his resonant voice filling the room without needing to raise it. "5 days ago, I boarded a flight to Chicago for a business meeting. I had a valid first-class ticket for a specific seat. I was forcibly removed from that seat in the aircraft because another passenger, a white passenger, felt entitled to my space. What began as a distressing personal experience has revealed a disturbing pattern of corporate behavior that extends far beyond one incident on one airline." Camera shutters clicked rapidly as Marcus continued. "This is not about one seat on one plane. This is about whether we are truly committed to equal treatment under law and in commerce. This is about accountability when that commitment is broken." Anthony stepped forward, methodically laying out the evidence they had gathered. Using video displays and document projections, he detailed the connections between Data Shield Technologies and the airline incident. "We have confirmed that Bradley Thornton, then Executive Vice President at Data Shield, was not randomly on that flight," Anthony explained. Text messages between Thornton and flight attendant Veronica Miller, who is his cousin by marriage, show. This was a coordinated effort to prevent Mr. Washington from reaching his meeting with White Tech Industries. Gasps rippled through the audience as Anthony displayed the text exchanges on screen, with personal information redacted, but the damning content clearly visible. "Make sure he doesn't make the meeting. M says whatever it takes." M refers to Michael Harrison, CEO of Data Shield. Anthony continued. "We have obtained phone records showing calls between Harrison and Thornton immediately before and after the incident, as well as communications with National Airlines personnel." The evidence mounted as Anthony methodically presented testimony from airline employees, additional passenger video, and financial records showing irregular payments between Data Shield subsidiaries and consulting firms linked to National Airlines executives. This was not merely discrimination, though that would be serious enough, Anthony concluded. This was corporate sabotage using racial bias as a weapon. The room erupted with questions, but Marcus raised his hand for silence. "Before we take questions, I want to introduce someone who has an important perspective to share." To the surprise of everyone in the room, Jeffrey Williams, CEO of White Tech Industries, walked onto the stage. The Asian American executive adjusted his glasses before addressing the stunned media. "I came here today to announce that White Tech Industries is proceeding with our planned merger with CyberShield Solutions," Williams stated firmly. "Furthermore, we are severing all existing contracts with Data Shield Technologies, effective immediately." The announcement sent shockwaves through the room, and undoubtedly through financial markets where the news would instantly impact stock prices. "As an Asian American executive who has experienced my own share of discrimination in the technology sector," Williams continued, "I recognize the importance of this moment. Our merger with CyberShield isn't just about market share. It's about creating a technology leader that reflects America's diversity and demonstrates that ethical business practices and success are not mutually exclusive." Marcus and Jeffrey then unveiled their joint commitment to create the industry's most comprehensive anti-discrimination initiative, with measurable goals, independent oversight, and public reporting. "This is what leadership looks like," Marcus stated. "Not hiding behind NDAs and settlements, but acknowledging problems and addressing them transparently." As the press conference continued, screens at the back of the room began displaying real-time stock market reactions. Data Shield shares plummeted 28% within minutes of the revelations. National Airlines stock, already weakened from previous days, dropped another 15%. Meanwhile, both CyberShield and White Tech saw their values increase as investors responded positively to their ethical stance and merger announcement. The question and answer session had just begun when a commotion erupted at the back of the room. Bradley Thornton pushed his way through the crowd, his face flushed with anger and panic. "This is slander," he shouted, pointing dramatically at Marcus. "You're destroying reputations with baseless accusations." Security personnel moved quickly to intercept Thornton, but before they reached him, his outburst had been captured by dozens of cameras, an unforced error that would further damage DataShield's attempts to distance themselves from him. As Thornton was escorted from the room, another unexpected development unfolded. National Airlines CEO Franklin Pierce entered through a side door, accompanied by his executive team. The airline's CEO approached the podium, his expression grave. "Mr. Washington," Pierce began, his voice carrying through the now silent room. "On behalf of National Airlines, I want to offer a public and unreserved apology for the discriminatory treatment you experienced on our aircraft." The stunning reversal from his earlier position left the room momentarily speechless. Pierce continued, looking directly into the cameras. "What happened was inexcusable and reflects systemic failures within our corporate culture. Today, I am announcing a comprehensive overhaul of our training, policies, and leadership to ensure nothing like this happens again." Pierce detailed immediate changes. Diane Reynolds had been terminated along with several other executives implicated in the incident and subsequent cover-up attempts. The airline would implement the anti-bias training program Marcus had proposed, create a chief diversity officer position reporting directly to the CEO, and establish an independent review board for discrimination complaints. "We are taking these steps not just because of public pressure," Pierce concluded, "but because they are the right thing to do. National Airlines must be a company that serves all passengers with equal respect and dignity." The admission and commitments from the airline CEO created a powerful moment, one that transformed the narrative from a single incident of discrimination to the possibility of genuine corporate accountability and change. As the press conference continued, Marcus revealed the final piece of their investigation: evidence linking the discrimination against him to a broader pattern affecting minority executives across industries. "Our team has identified 17 similar incidents in the past 3 years," Marcus explained, displaying anonymized data on the screens. "Minority executives targeted with discriminatory treatment at critical business moments, treatment that affected negotiations, deals, and career trajectories. This isn't about one CEO on one flight. This is about how power structures maintain themselves by making success more difficult for those who don't fit the traditional mold." The comprehensive nature of the evidence presented, combined with the unexpected public accountability from National Airlines and Whitetech's supportive stance, created an unprecedented moment of transparency about corporate discrimination practices. As the press conference concluded, Marcus announced the formation of a new industry coalition to combat corporate discrimination. Today, 12 major companies have committed to joining our initiative for corporate equity and accountability. This is just the beginning. The cameras continued rolling as Marcus, Jeffrey, and even Franklin Pierce stood together, an image that would appear on front pages and news sites across the country, symbolizing the possibility of accountability and change in corporate America. Outside the press conference, as media analysts immediately began dissecting the revelations and their implications, Anthony pulled Marcus aside. "That was masterful," he said quietly. "You've changed the conversation." Marcus looked at his friend, exhaustion finally showing through his composed exterior. "Now we have to make sure the change outlasts the headlines." 6 months later, Marcus Washington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of CyberShield's expanded headquarters in downtown Chicago. The autumn sunlight glinted off the glass and steel of neighboring skyscrapers as employees moved purposefully through the open workspace behind him. The company's relocation from San Francisco had been just one of many transformations following what the business press now simply called the incident. The successful merger with Whitetech had created the largest minority-led technology corporation in America, valued at over $4 billion. More importantly, it had established a new model for corporate leadership that prioritized both innovation and inclusion. The combined company, now operating under the CyberShield name, had become the industry's fastest-growing cybersecurity provider, with a client list that included 70% of Fortune 500 companies. Marcus turned from the window as his executive assistant announced the arrival of his 2 o'clock meeting. The conference room filled with a diverse group of executives from National Airlines, including their newly appointed Chief Diversity Officer, Layla Patel. The quarterly implementation report is encouraging, Marcus noted, reviewing the data on his tablet. 93% completion of the comprehensive bias training program, significant improvements in customer satisfaction metrics among minority passengers, and a 40% increase in diversity hiring at management levels. Franklin Pierce, who had remained as National Airlines CEO through the transformation process, nodded with cautious pride. The changes haven't been easy, but they've been necessary. Our corporate culture is healthier, and surprisingly, our financial performance has improved despite initial market concerns. The airline had become an unexpected success story in corporate accountability. After their public apology and commitment to structural changes, they had embraced the process with genuine dedication. The anti-bias training program developed with Marcus's team had become a model now being adopted by other transportation companies. The most significant metric, Layla added, is the 70% reduction in bias-related complaints from both passengers and employees. People feel heard and respected in ways they simply didn't before. As the meeting concluded, Marcus received notification that a special visitor had arrived. In the reception area, he found Emma Blackwell, the elderly passenger whose testimony had provided crucial evidence during the investigation. Now, 82, she stood a little straighter than when he'd last seen her, pride evident in her bearing. "Ms. Blackwell," Marcus greeted her warmly, "thank you for coming. The training video you participated in has been incredibly effective." Emma had become an unexpected advocate, sharing her perspective as someone who had witnessed discrimination, but initially remained silent. Her candid discussion of regret and redemption had resonated deeply with employees across industries. "I never expected to find purpose at my age," she admitted as Marcus escorted her to his office. "But speaking up has given me more peace than decades of silence ever did." They were joined by James Becker, the security officer who had been involved in removing Marcus from the plane. After providing key testimony about institutional pressures and implicit bias training failures, Becker had been hired to help develop airport security anti-bias protocols. His first-hand experience had proven invaluable in identifying how security procedures could be improved without compromising safety. "The implementation at O'Hare is complete," Becker reported. "Complaints about discriminatory security screening have decreased 62% in the first quarter." Later that afternoon, Marcus welcomed Anthony Jenkins and his legal team for an update on the ongoing legal proceedings. The conference room wall displayed the status of multiple cases stemming from their investigation. Federal charges against Bradley Thornton and 3 Data Shield executives will proceed to trial next month, Kiara Johnson reported. "The evidence is overwhelming, particularly after 2 more executives agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in exchange for reduced charges." Data Shield had not survived the scandal intact. After multiple executives faced federal charges for corporate espionage, stock manipulation, and civil rights violations, the company had been acquired by a competitor for a fraction of its former value. Michael Harrison, the former CEO, was awaiting trial on multiple federal charges. "The civil case against the remaining Data Shield entities has been settled," Anthony added. "The terms include a $50 million fund for minority tech entrepreneurs and mandatory independent oversight of their business practices for 5 years. Sofia Rodriguez updated the team on the broader impact of their work. "The Corporate Accountability Coalition you founded now includes 37 major companies. The standardized reporting metrics on diversity and inclusion are being adopted, even by companies outside the coalition, as shareholders demand transparency." As his team shared additional updates, Marcus reflected on the personal transformation of the past 6 months. The fight had cost him, financially, emotionally, physically, but it also reconnected him with the core values that had driven him since childhood. The merger with Whitetech had exceeded financial projections while creating unprecedented opportunities for underrepresented professionals in the tech industry. That evening, Marcus hosted a celebration event at CyberShield's headquarters. The guest list included key figures from throughout the journey: Jeffrey Williams, Franklin Pierce, Emma Blackwell, members of the legal team, and the young black tech entrepreneurs Marcus had met during the crisis. The most honored guest, however, was Elaine Washington. Marcus's mother beamed with pride as she witnessed her son's impact. "Your father would be so proud," she whispered during a quiet moment. not just of what you've achieved, but of how you achieved it, by standing firm in your principles. The celebration reached its emotional peak when Marcus introduced a young man named Terrell Johnson, a brilliant computer science student from Marcus's old Harlem neighborhood. Thanks to CyberShield's expanded scholarship and mentoring program, Terrell would be joining the company as an intern while completing his degree. "Seeing you stand up made me believe I could belong in this industry," Terrell told Marcus, his voice carrying genuine emotion, not just succeed in it but help transform it. As Marcus surveyed the gathering, the unlikely alliances formed, the systems beginning to change, the doors opening for a new generation, he recognized the bittersweet nature of progress. The victory was significant, but incomplete. Discrimination remained a reality in corporate America and beyond. The work would continue long after today's headlines faded. Taking the podium for brief remarks, Marcus addressed this reality directly. "What we're celebrating today isn't the end of discrimination in corporate America. That journey continues. What we're celebrating is the power of accountability and the possibility of transformation. 6 months ago, I was removed from a seat I had legally purchased because someone decided I didn't belong there. Today, we're building companies and systems where everyone belongs, where merit and character determine opportunity, not appearance or background." He raised his glass in a toast. "To the work accomplished and the work ahead. To justice that doesn't require extraordinary circumstances or perfect victims to be achieved. And to a future where the question isn't whether discrimination will be confronted, but how quickly and completely it will be addressed." The event concluded with the announcement of Marcus's next ambitious project, a technology industry consortium dedicated to creating true equality of opportunity in the sector. The initiative would combine research, policy advocacy, educational pathways, and corporate commitments to address systemic barriers from early education through executive leadership. As guests departed, Marcus found himself once again at the windows overlooking Chicago, the city lights now glittering against the night sky. Anthony joined him there, the two friends from Harlem who had traveled so far from their beginnings. "Was it worth it?" Anthony asked quietly. "All of it. The stress, the risk, the public scrutiny?" Marcus considered the question, remembering the moment on the plane when he had to decide whether to accept removal from his rightful seat or stand firm despite the consequences. "It was worth it," he replied finally. "Not because we won every battle or because the system is fixed. It was worth it because sometimes the greatest service you can offer the world is to simply refuse to accept injustice, even when acceptance would be easier." He turned from the window to face the now empty event space, where new alliances had formed and new commitments had been made. The seat was never just about the seat. It was about who gets to occupy space in this society, with dignity and without challenge. And that fight continues, one seat at a time. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up against discrimination and create meaningful change? Has this story inspired you to think differently about your own response when witnessing injustice? Comment below with your thoughts and experiences. Like and subscribe if you believe in the power of individual courage to transform systems. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that standing up for what's right matters, even when it's difficult. Thank you for joining me for this incredible journey of justice and transformation. I look forward to bringing you more stories that illuminate the path toward a more equitable world. This powerful story of Marcus Washington's fight against discrimination offers several profound lessons. First, individual dignity should never be compromised, even when facing powerful systems. Marcus could have accepted the airline's settlement to protect his business interests, but he recognized that true leadership requires standing for something greater than personal gain. Second, accountability creates change. By refusing to sign an NDA and insisting on structural reforms rather than financial compensation, Marcus transformed a personal humiliation into institutional improvement. His strategic approach, combining legal action, media savvy, and business leverage, demonstrates how effectively addressing racism requires engaging all available tools. Third, allyship matters. From Anthony's legal expertise to Emma's witness testimony, from Jeffrey's business partnership to the support of other Black executives, Marcus succeeded because he wasn't fighting alone. Real change requires both courageous individuals and supportive communities. Finally, the story reminds us that discrimination continues even at the highest levels of achievement. No amount of professional success, wealth, or credentials protects people of color from bias. The systems that perpetuate racism must be actively dismantled through consistent pressure, strategic action, and unwavering determination. These lessons extend beyond corporate settings to every space where people face discrimination. True justice requires not just addressing individual incidents, but transforming the systems that enable them. Has someone ever judged you based on your appearance rather than your character or credentials? Have you witnessed discrimination and wondered whether speaking up would make a difference? Marcus's story shows how one person's refusal to accept injustice can create ripples of change throughout an entire industry. Share your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever stood up against discrimination? What happened? If you've been silent in the past, what would help you speak up next time? Comment with your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice. Share this video with someone who needs inspiration to stand firm in their own fight for dignity and respect. Thank you for joining me in exploring how courage, strategy, and determination can transform personal pain into powerful change. Remember, the most important seat you'll ever defend is your place in a more just and equitable world.